another episode of CROWSFOOT, brought to you by Northwest College of Construction. Today I have with me Nate Wadsworth from Essential Craftsman and Essential Craftsman 2. And for those of you who don't know about this podcast and YouTube channel, you're really missing out. You need to go check it out right away. It is Essential Craftsman on YouTube and Essential Craftsman 2. And Nate here is the producer. I just can't say enough about it. So we're gonna dive in right now. Nate, how are you today? And thank you so much for coming out.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm doing great. And this is my whole world, is talking about and thinking about all these kinds of things. So very happy to do that with you a little bit.
Thank you. For our viewers, tell us about your childhood a bit and your background. And maybe you can give us a little background color on what it was like growing up with the Essential Craftsman.
Well, I had a great childhood, just, you know, classic and just great. My parents are, you know, really loving, and everybody who's familiar with our channel knows my dad really well, and probably what you imagine him like as a father is pretty much what he was like. He was just, you know, just the best you could ask for. And the things that stuck out, I think, really, and there's a lot, but when I look back, and my dad was a tradesman, a carpenter when I was a young child, and then he was doing more contracting when I was in high school. But I remember being really small and seeing my dad wearing his tool belt, you know, at home when he's doing home projects, but his truck, you know, full of tools, and the same, you know, like the coming home with that kind of tired energy after just, you know, hammering all day. And man, that really, like, I remember that to this day, feeling almost like a birthright. Like, my dad is a hard worker and he's got skills and he builds. And I remember thinking almost that I like inherited that the way I inherited my blue eyes from him. And so I learned a lot of things from him, but man, there's definitely a part of just, you know, having him as my dad where I really felt like my dad works hard, I work hard. You know, he's 6 feet tall, I'm 6 feet tall. And to some extent, even thinking like he can build things, I can build things. Now, that's not really true, but when I was a kid, I remember kind of thinking that it was just like something that you absorbed. And as it turned out, that has been an enormous advantage and blessing in my life. Just that mindset that was kind of that I got from being around him. So it was really great. He's super hardworking guy, and this won't surprise people either, but the reason he's so good at teaching and being an educator is because he's been doing that his whole life. And that, you know, when I was a kid and when I was younger, I would see him educating and teaching and sharing. And so Essential Craftsman has only been on YouTube, you know, for a few years, but he's been doing this game for a long time, sharing his knowledge and learning. You know, his career, he had lots of different phases where he was acquiring expertise from different areas. And obviously that continues to this day, where he has learned an enormous amount about video work and online content. And so wow, it's really a testament to a person who's never stopped learning and works hard. And then the kind of, you know, the result and the life kind of builds itself around that. And it's really been beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. I share some of that experience. My dad, granddad, they were always working. So I get that a bit, where that overwhelming feeling of like, wow, is that really how it's done? You know, like I always felt like, wow, I've got to have to come way up to be able to swing that hammer or to, you know, move those rocks or whatever they were doing.
Yeah. I remember also, like, when I was a kid, working for my dad and working in general was like pretty miserable. Like I hated it, you know, and I would go to these job sites and I was really miserable, and just like, it was like torturous, like doing this work thinking that, oh, my friends are swimming at the river, or whatever it is. And I was working, but I remember the energy, and my mom is the same way, that they really enjoyed working so much. And I remember thinking like, okay, at some point this is going to like be fun, or I'm going to enjoy this. What's going on with that? And I remember kind of thinking like, okay, and lots of times my dad would be doing literally the same work, digging out and grubbing out a post hole or whatever. And I remember thinking like, okay, at some point something will click and I'm going to like actually enjoy this. And man, that would be nice, because I'm not enjoying it now. And turns out that actually happened. I couldn't put my finger on when, probably just when I became more of an adult and was doing it, not as a, not being forced to, but, it happened for me, and I love working now.
Yeah, no, I have almost exactly the same sentiment. I absolutely abhorred doing any kind of work with my dad. When I always loved being with my dad, don't get me wrong, but when it's 110 degrees in the Sierra foothills and we're pulling rocks out of clay, and they're just on fire, and we're stacking them and dragging them around the property and building rock walls. I still remember that to this day. Mm-hmm. Or he'd have me, or even dealing with the livestock and goats. I could go on about goats kicking my butt for my childhood, but it was miserable. But it's funny how when you jump forward in time, you find yourself in a tough spot. Isn't that the space you go to? At the bottom of your gas tank, you've got, you remember that visceral experience of some of that misery actually becomes fortitude, right?
Yeah, there's like a familiarity, I think. Once you've like put in some number of like really hard kind of miserable days, then you become less afraid of those. I remember for a while when I was in high school in the summer, I would go with my dad to the logging site. And this was only for maybe one summer. And it was a kind of a long drive, maybe like 40 minutes. And it was really early in the morning. This was in the summertime. So it was really early because it was dark. And I remember that drive, and like every mile, I just got like more and more depressed as we got closer. But what happened after some number of days and you get through it, you become less afraid of it. And I think, and that's just the truth. So for people who've never had to like do really long working days, it makes sense that they'd be terrified of doing that, and it would seem miserable because it's so unfamiliar. But after you just experience that some handful of times, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've done this before and I've done worse. And I hammered that, and I'm going to hammer this. And you kind of, there's like I don't know, it's like a muscle that builds up, not the actual muscles, just the ability to be like, I've done this before, I'm going to do it again, and it's no big deal. Something like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's so good for sharing that with some new apprentices and people coming in, say to the school or to the trades. That learning curve can be vicious if you're coming in at 30, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be vicious. And it's not to scare people off, but to maybe to help prepare them for, what's to come. It really takes some dedication, right? When you're going to come to this stuff at a later age. But anyways, kudos to those of you out there who are. Tell us a little bit more about your childhood. When I've heard your dad talk about Roseburg, it kind of, I feel like I'm hearing a passage of where the red fern grows, or a river runs through it, or something like this, right? It's just like, and he's so great with words. But did you grow up in Roseburg as well, or part of that time, or you guys were some of the time in Arizona, maybe, or is that right?
Yeah, kind of. So my dad, let me catch the people up in case they're not super familiar with my dad, but he moved to Wyoming, and that's where I was born, and he worked and got into building there, working for a builder. And I was just a baby. And then when he was 3, my family moved to Las Vegas. So in my life, between the age of 3 and 12, we lived in Las Vegas, and that's where he was really framing and working and building and stacking roofs and learning an enormous amount. He worked for a concrete contractor, and that's where I really like saw what my dad was made of, because this is Vegas. And so he'd come home, and like his leather belt had that white, sweat salt like going through it. And And then when we were 12, we moved back to Roseburg, which is where he grew up, and this is where Grandma and Grandpa lived. And yeah, it's really a beautiful place. And we lived outside of Roseburg in a small town called Glide, actually a little ways outside of that. So we were quite a ways up in the sticks, and it was a very different lifestyle. But I was just a kid. I was just 12. And so when you're that age, you just kind of, go with the flow. And so that's what it was like. And then the work he did here was similar. He was logging, but then started contracting and building again. So I got a good kind of look at his work life in these different settings, and it was all different, but there was a lot of components to it that were the same. It's using tools and solving problems and taking risks. And I was really interested in his business and his career, even when I was in high school. Kind of, I remember when he got his contractor's license, just kind of overhearing my parents talking about it, and he was taking the test. And I remember thinking like, oh, wow, that's so you have to have a license in order to do that. That had never clicked for me, but I was interested and aware, and I had a front row seat to it. And so, like I said, to people who watch our videos, the guy that you see in the videos, that's really him. He has been in the exact shoes of your students who've been, the new man on a job site and probably made dumb mistakes and felt dumb and had to work through it, and everything between there and where he is now. And I certainly feel like I had a front row seat to that whole show, and it was, really something.
Yeah. Wow. So it's continuing, right? Because you're producing most of the show to this point, Central Craftsman. And so when we're seeing Scott so often, you're holding the camera very often. And I have seen a lot of stuff, especially framing and some of the concrete stuff that I recall out there when you guys are working on the spec house. I see you out there working as well. But I know a lot of time behind the camera, that's your job. And you also got started doing a lot of the editing. So it's interesting to me how you've extended from, as your whole childhood, you've literally been watching your dad go through this journey. And I know that you took some time and you went to college and whatnot, if I think I got that right. And
yes.
And if you were anything like me, you might have thought, well, I'm going to get away from this for a little while and then whoop, right back around. Right. So I think it's excellent. I think it's just great. And I think that also helps lend to some of the authenticity, because no one's got a front row view like you do. And now here you are capturing him as he's really ascending through, really on top of his game and all these trades. Anyway, this is really cool to all of us. And I appreciate you sharing all that. Is really cool. So for those of you who don't know about Essential Craftsman 2, please go check out Nate's work on YouTube. And I think you guys are out there doing little stuff on Instagram we talked about, right? And some of the other platforms.
Yeah, that's right. We're trying to put as much content out there as we can, and some of it's good, and others it's a lot of testing and trial and error. And I'm not trained in how to do this, and my dad is only trained in the trade. So both of us are really testing and experimenting and making a few mistakes, but we're having a really good time putting the content out. And certainly there's almost an insatiable demand for it. It seems like, people are really, I don't know, appreciative or hungry, but there's a need for, this information to be out there. And it's now that you can pull it up on your phone, we're going to keep doing that.
I think it's excellent. And regardless if you were trained or not, you guys are at the tip of the spear of actually taking authentic, conventional trades, crafts, and showing how it is done. For the most part, that is all, you guys are talking about codes, you're talking about engineering, architecture, you guys are talking about earth moving, heavy equipment. It just goes on, and all of it's very pertinent to the real job site. That's what I love about it.
It's easy to think that you have to learn on the job and seeing problems like, oh, I've seen this before. Like I'm thinking about a plumber, you know, and they see some really unique situations that they can then fix the next time that's valuable for someone who's been like decades in their trade, and that trade knowledge is priceless. But you can learn so much from a video from someone else who is like showing you that situation. You're not there. You didn't put your hands on it, but it shouldn't be discounted how valuable it can be to absorb something from either a teacher or a YouTube video of someone showing you something. And the real skill here is being able to kind of learn it, and you can't remember everything you've ever learned through a teacher or YouTube, but I don't know, almost just like filing in a way that like, I think I might have saw something someday, and then having the skill to go dig out and find that wherever that information was. That is so valuable, because I know there's a lot of tradesmen who've been 20 years in their career, and they might have solved something, but our minds don't work that way that you can recall it back. So having the ability to go out and find the solutions and look up the codes and locate somebody who can help you is so valuable. And it shouldn't be, someone shouldn't think just because they didn't have, you know, come from a plumbing family and have like all these generations of plumbers that they can't like get to that point. Being able to find the information is right up there in terms of importance and usefulness.
Absolutely. And I mean, from my experience, and most people I think will attest to this, is that, I mean, most of your learning is filed as an image in your mind. I mean, I'm no psychologist, and I certainly don't have anybody here to back me up on that. But from my experience,
yeah,
people say visual learner, but man, I'll be damned if not everybody's not filing memories, and their own kind of mental card catalog is done in images, right? So,
yeah,
and let's face it, you and I, just riffing on what it was like to grow up around tradesmen, is a big deal, because that imagery, we may have had that physical experience, but we still have those memories cataloged, as well as it's just raw inspiration, right? So you can watch a movie, a video, and you could be inspired. And it's not unlike a dream, right? You have a dream, you wake up, it seems very real, and you go out and you start to build something based on that thing, right? So the imagery is huge. It's that initial bridge, and then the rest is like, oh, they can do that, I can do that, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a bit of that monkey see, monkey do stuff, but a lot of people will sit on the other side of that bridge and never attempt it, because they never maybe considered it, or considered how it's done. And again, anyway, I'm out in the weeds here, but your videos just do that so well. And you're showing people tools and processes, and just the lights go on. It's much needed in the country right now. And I just think it's awesome. Tell me a little bit more. I know that, of course, Essential Craftsman is clearly a business. You guys have, you either have or you're working out a model for that as you've gone along. But I know that before all this, I believe that you have some other business ventures that you yourself were involved with.
Well, maybe to do that, let me lead into it, and I'll just kind of give the listener a quick overview of my so-called career. And I say so-called because it's not typical, but that might kind of fill in some cracks. So I went to college, and, you know, on my dad's recommendation, you know, and I knew from a young age that was what he thought would be the smartest thing for me. And he wished that he had finished college. And so that's what I did. And I studied accounting and graduated in accounting. And then after school, I worked in an accounting firm for 2 years. And this was, at the time, I thought I was like the unluckiest guy in the world, because I was in college from 2004 to 2008. And this was right when real estate was just screaming going up. And I've always been fascinated with real estate since the moment I learned you could own land, which still seems kind of goofy. But I remember being 10 and learning that and thinking that was really goofy. Like, how could you own this dirt. And so anyways, I went to college, and knowing while I was at school that I was going to be a real estate guy. And I happened to be in school while real estate was, just screaming up. And I felt like I was just totally left behind. And I was just feeling sorry for myself for a couple years there. And then I graduated in December of 2008, which for the listeners, you can do the math at. That was pretty much the moment the real estate and the whole economy was just screaming down. And so then I felt unlucky again, feeling sorry for myself, like, oh, of course, I leave college in the job market, the country's losing like 500,000 jobs a month and da-da-da. And I just was like, I was happy to be leaving college. So I wasn't truly stressed, but I did feel kind of like typical Nate luck, First I missed the real estate. Now I'm missing a job market. Well, anyways, I got this job at an accounting firm and worked there for a couple of years. And now in 2012, I quit to do real estate because and now this is where my luck turned around, because what at the time seemed like so unlucky that real estate was screaming up in college turned out to be the luckiest thing in the world. Because in 2011, after I had saved up a little bit of money from working at this accounting firm, real estate was on absolute like rock bottom fire sale. It was the cheapest real estate had ever been. And it was the easiest decision in the world to quit my job accounting to buy and fix up real estate in Arizona. I was living in Phoenix. That's where I took that job. And so from 2011 till 2018, I lived in Arizona buying, and I bought and sold and fix and flipped, as would be like the more recognizable term, single family homes and multifamily homes. And so this is where I kind of really got a lot of my hands-on experience in the trades. Now, I would never consider myself a tradesman, because the only trade I'm really proficient at would be demo, I would say, and just like the real labor parts. But I probably fixed up and sold between like 40 and 50 homes, maybe. Not all of them were full, gut to the studs remodels, but a lot of them were. But I learned a lot about how houses worked by doing that, by kind of taking them apart and putting them back together. And the real estate market was, going up very steadily all of those years. And so in 2017 was when we started making videos for Essential Craftsmen. And that was because I at the time, looking back, I was clearly wrong, but at the time I was like a little stressed about the market. I felt like the market had just been going up so much for so long, and I didn't have as much confidence that the market would continue in the same rate, and there was a lot of competition. So I kind of was getting away from those single family fix and flips, and I bought and had the plan to build a storage facility. And I was also interested in building like an RV park or a mobile storage facility. No, I'm sorry, not mobile storage, RV park or a traditional storage facility. But the opportunity, this piece of property popped up to build on. And so I bought that. I stopped fixing and flipping homes and put all of my money and effort and energy into building this storage facility, which took a while because it had to go through zoning and permitting and all of these things that I had never done before, engineering and all this stuff that I knew nothing about. But I think because of the kind of mindset I got from my dad that like, I can work, I'm a clever guy, I can figure out this problem. And I was probably very naive about it also. And I just kind of was like, I'll figure this out. And I jumped in it, and I did figure it out, but it took a lot longer. Those were the couple years where Essential Craftsmen really got started, because I was working on that development, and I didn't want to like spread myself too thin and do a bunch of other real estate deals, because I knew I was going to need that money to build the storage facility. So we started making videos. I started making videos with my dad as a way to be productive and do something valuable while my storage facility was pushing through. So it was an entrepreneurial venture. I built that facility. It's still open right now. I have a manager running it for me in Phoenix, and it is everything I could have hoped for. The residential rental properties that I had accumulated turned out to be just an enormous amount of work. I was just running all around town, you know, replacing refrigerators and repairing broken screens and cleaning out apartments after families moved out. And it was brutal. And I wasn't making any money because I had mortgages on all the properties and I didn't have enough. I've never been really good at hiring people, so I didn't hire somebody to help. So anyways, the storage facility has been much better than all of that. It's contractor storage. So my tenants are small contractors who are storing their trucks, trailers, and equipment. And that business is what has allowed me now to focus all my time and energy making more videos and building Essential Craftsman, which is my primary business. And it is a business. We're doing it and making a living on it. But it's been a really interesting career and business, and creating these opportunities is just so fun. And it's really like my favorite thing about work is the kind of the creative side of having an idea about, hey, maybe this would work. And that could be about a property, you know, and a remodel to sell it and make some money, or it could be, you know, an online business like what we have now. But I just love it. And it's the skills and the things I learned regarding construction and the trades and everything has been just so valuable with every one of these ventures for me. It was the perfect, much more useful than college, to be honest. The things I learned in college were useful, but I don't think they're as useful as the actual, like, you know, trade knowledge. I won't say skills, but the trade knowledge that I've accumulated. So yeah, I'm a fan.
Thinking about what you just said about flipping the houses and then maintaining all those houses and then staying on top of the mortgages. I mean, that's a lot of work. So, I mean, big deal. How would you, and while your sentiment about college seems apt and fairly regular that I hear, how would you say that being an accountant informed your lifestyle in the trades? Because I see that that's a major component that early contractors are not getting right. Mm-hmm. Young people, new apprentices, and even, you know, master builders don't seem to get the accounting piece right. And it's just simple finance for the most part. But how would you say that background informed your direction in these business ventures?
A couple things. First of all, I was not great at accounting, and at school, it was just a battle. I was failing classes and it was like failing tests, and I just kind of got through it, skin of my teeth. So that being said, the thing that finally did get through my hard head, credits and debits and double entry, you know, assets and liabilities and income and revenue and expenses, just those basic things that we all know kind of what they mean, but seeing them in the context of a set of financial statements, how, you know, what liabilities and how they all kind of stack up on a balance sheet, to this day is so valuable. Because I've learned I pay a bookkeeper. I don't do my own books. I was, like most small business owners and contractors, it was just impossible for me to keep on top of that and run the actual business itself. So that'd be my first set of advice. Even for me, with someone who went through an accounting program and worked in a firm, I don't have any interest, and I don't recommend, and I don't do my own books. I have somebody else do it. But it is very handy to be able to look at the statements and know what they mean. And that it really is important, because these expenses and these statements, you know, if you don't know, let's say looking back even 1 year, if you don't know exactly how the year went and you just are kind of assuming like, oh, I made money, I'm depositing checks and I'm paying my bills, it's really hard to actually know how much of all this money in and out, and there's going to be a lot, especially for contractors when you're building something, you know, and you just kind of touch the money and give it to the suppliers. But how much of that is actually like coming through that is yours? And if you don't have good financial statements, then you don't know. And if you don't know, then you could waste decades working and breaking your back to only kind of realize that you don't have a business, you just have a job, and you're simply like paying your, and that's not like an insolvable problem, but you got to know that that problem exists. And so anyways, financial statements, super important. And it was important for me to learn that. Now, for me, the other thing I learned in accounting, the accounting firm I worked at was a tax firm. So I was preparing taxes. And the thing that I learned there that was so helpful was the people whose tax returns we were doing, a lot of them were real estate guys and such. They were making a lot more money than I was. And so I saw all these tax returns of these small business owners making money. And I was just kind of like scratching my head like, oh, so all of these people can have these businesses and make, this kind of money. Wow, what am I doing? And so it was a really valuable eye opener to realize like, okay, it's very possible to have your own business, small, just like a husband and a wife, and make good money and live on your own. And I remember the day that I left that accounting firm, it was like the first day that I had kind of been like out in public on a weekday, middle of the day, like I was always in the office, like from like 8 till 5. And that first week I was like running some errands like 1 p.m. And I remember being in like this store, just kind of looking around like, wow, all these people like out and about in the middle of the day. I had just like conditioned myself to, this like office worker mentality. And I'm just so grateful to be away from that. It was scary almost to like spend even 2 years like chained to that desk.
All of a sudden.
Yeah. I learned a lot. I'm glad I did it. And I basically left the second I stopped learning new things, which is a good rule of thumb of when it's time to move on.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So much of what you just said was actually very profound, I think, and in a way that maybe to some of us may not seem profound, but I know that a lot of people they dive in and they ask questions later, right? So often. And, what you just said to me, some of what I gathered from that was that you knew or you kind of explained it as like, you felt you weren't doing good at accounting. You were failing. You were not doing well in school, but you informed yourself enough to know what the red flags were and to also understand what your limits were financially, it seemed like, which to me is even, and then the fact that you even touched on that you felt you were a failure is a huge impetus to doing better is what I've noticed, because if we glide through things, we tend not to take the time to stop and really perfect those things. Right. And I just know that at an early age and becoming a contractor pretty early, I could have really used some financial discipline and some more help in that way. And while I had a lot of skills for building, it took me a good, a good little while to get on top of actually making good money. Then when you start to make good money as a, sole proprietor, and then you start adding crews and you bump up your game, and then that's a whole new issue, right? And so just some basic financial knowledge, I think, is paramount for so many people's long-term success. And anyway, when I've listened to your talks and your interviews and stuff, I've often wondered, what your thought was on that. And
my number one like thought, and the thing that I to this day credit as my most, I'll say valuable, but the thing that's been the most helpful to my career and success in every part of my life financially is being able to save money. And I'm not like the world's best saver, and I am like pretty frugal, but that is so important. And especially when I was younger, when I was in school and when I was, working, when I was younger, like being able to save and like put your own money aside is so valuable, because when the opportunity comes to take a chance and start a business or get a license and do like that little pile, it might be $5,000 or less, but if it can pay for several months rent and your bills to buy you the time, it is so valuable. And so I can't recommend strongly enough to people to just, especially young people, like, don't blow your paychecks on stupid stuff. Save, put money aside, save, be smart, live below your means, drive an older vehicle. The stuff that's, you know, beating a dead horse to go through every little opportunity to save money, but is so important. And without a doubt, like the fact that when I was also married, when I started flipping houses and kind of went on in my business on my own, but the fact that we had saved up a little pile of money was the reason that we were able to succeed, is because we had just enough money to like take down our first deal. And the first deal I did was in Mesa. It was on the street called Revere. I was like pretty nervous, you know, and we doubled our money. In other words, I had like we had saved $30,000 in our bank before that deal. And we made $30,000 on that deal. And the deal took like, you know, 60 days or something. And it just would never have happened if we hadn't sacrificed and not done the, you know, trips and the whatever things we could have done with that money. So I know some people learn that lesson at other times in their lives, and some people make mistakes for a few years and then they kind of get it. And whatever you got to do to kind of click and live a little below your means, save money and set it aside, that has really paid off and been so, I think it's been the most like valuable single step that my wife and I have done that's paid off.
Yeah, it's the long cut, right? It's the long-term prize rather than the sprint, right?
Yeah.
The instant gratification thing. So great advice. I'm wondering, and this is something I've been wondering about quite a bit lately, is that while I often bring up the same exact thing to students, and I have much the same story in that regard, Bill, what would you, if you can, are you able to explain or maybe truncate or maybe touch on what is the feeling, like the physical feeling of saving money? Because I feel like there's still a gap when I say save 10% of your check. I mean, it's so Hallmark, it doesn't even work anymore. It's like, wah, wah, wah. What is it that, where were you in your level of maturity, or how did you look at life in a way that you placed a certain amount of value, and I don't mean monetary value, but that you recognized that your time was so important? I mean, I'm assuming it was something like that. And sometimes these are things that certain people don't think about. They were brought up a certain way, or they were always had a certain way of being. But to me, to touch to the young person who, as soon as they get a big paycheck working a prevailing wage job, and they'd want to go buy a new truck, a new motorcycle, a new set of rims, what can you recommend to them? Can you touch somewhere, you know, touching on your own experience, that the way that you actually felt that stayed your hand from actually spending, right? Because there's that moment for everybody. And I know it's not one size fits all, but I think that's the part that we're all missing on this financial thing that we're trying to express to younger people and younger generations. There's something visceral, there's something alive that I had to come through several bad decisions before I was able to pull my hand back and not spend when I needed to not spend. Is there something like that happened for you? And
I would say the best way I could answer that would be like what kind of even still goes through my mind, or I try to let it go through my mind. And I'm not like the most frugal saver in the world. I'm, you know, I'm probably fairly average. But the thing that I remember kind of clicking, and I think it's from Benjamin Franklin, and he says, "A penny saved is a penny earned." I could be wrong about if that was attributed to him, but I remember, I think when I was 20 and I was kind of thinking about that, and like the way I thought about it changed. I had always visualized that a penny saved meant like taking a penny, or let's call it $100, and saving it, meaning putting it in your savings account and saving it. And that's the same as earning that money. That's how I kind of like initially thought of that phrase. But I remember when I was probably 20, it clicked like, oh, that's not that's not what that means. What he means by that is a penny saved in terms of not spent. So for example, if I'm at like, I don't know, let's just say like a fast food restaurant, and you could order the value meal that's like $9, or you could like buy lunch that costs $3 off the value menu. You saved $5. That's the $5 that I think that he's kind of talking about. The money not spent, the money saved, like, or like buying, I'm going to buy this coat. I really want that coat. And then deciding like, I actually don't need it. I'm not going to. And walking out just as like at peace with yourself and your confidence and your self-worth, even though you didn't like buy the thing that you felt like would make you happy at that moment, but deciding, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Saving the money in that way and still going about your life. I think that's the money that's how you save money, is by not spending it and still being, I'll say like at peace, but just fine, just understanding and getting this concept like of what do you really need. And it's easy to buy things and spend money almost as a way to, I say like make yourself happy, but there's like a rush you get. I do it all the time. I'll buy things on Amazon just because I want that rush of like buying something, but having the ability to be like, I don't need it. And so that to me is by the times when I'm able to discipline myself to like, I don't need that. I just don't need it. I think that's the money that can accumulate into real savings. The easiest, more than like, we're not gonna, XYZ or really like moving it into this account and that account and then still blowing your entire what's available. But it almost like in the moment deciding, do I need that? And then just thinking about it for a hair before you do. I don't know if that answers your question, but
oh no, that's great. I mean, you told it the way that made sense to you, and that's what I was looking for. I tell students very often to manage your loss. If you you can't make any money until you've actually managed your losses, right? But then I couple that with, it's a doubles game, right? You could start at 1 penny, and this week put 1 penny in the account. The next week you have to put 2 pennies, and then next week it's 4 pennies, and the next week it's 6 or 8 pennies, right? And you play that doubles game, and then you begin to build a muscle memory of just simply on, maybe it's a set day, a set time that you just say, I'm going to put that much in. I don't know. These are things that I tell the students sometimes, but it seemed to be right in line with what you were saying.
I should say, because it's easy, and I'm like reminding myself, it's easy to get so focused on money, whether you're earning it or saving it, but like feeling like the money is where it's all at. That's where where the wealth and I should really emphasize it's really not. It's more the opportunities that are going to come in your life, and making smart choices at the right moment in terms of opportunities and learning and taking risk and all that. The money and the saving is, for me, just that's so that when those opportunities come, you can snatch the opportunity. That's where the success and like the real magic can happen in terms of a career and a business is in taking those opportunities at the right time, or those jobs, or those clients, or hiring a key employee. The saving the money is just so that when those opportunities come, you can take advantage of them, instead of just being like, oh, if only I had, $10,000, I could buy this skid steer that's screaming deal right now, whatever it might be. So I'm just reminding myself and the listeners, don't think I'm so focused on like every penny, at the value meal that's where life ends and begins. No. Just get your ducks in order so that when the opportunities arise and show themselves, you can snatch them off the table and not have to wonder like, oh, can I, swing this?
Yeah, no, I love it. Tell me what you think about this. And a lot of times in the classroom, I'll also talk about your quality of life, right? And I try to encourage new apprentices to focus on their quality of life, because the money, like you just said, will never be enough. It will never be, you'll never get ultimate satisfaction just of having a lot of money in your bank account. There will be some satisfaction, of course, in knowing that that frees up time and energy and a lot of other things. So that's no joke. But long-term, lifetime goal, there's other things that we all have that we usually start out with some sort of quality of life factor. And I try to impress that if they have a quality of life or a vision that they want to achieve, to go about gathering money and wealth as a way of leveraging, kind of moving that boulder off the cliff, if you will, right? That money is actually a Burke bar, right? Or it's a lever for achieving a certain quality of life, right? Because I've seen a lot of people, they come in there, well, I just want a job. I need to make that money. And they put all in to do that. But then I find, or they might find later that they're actually not terribly happy or satisfied or fulfilled. While they may be stacking money, they're not, they've kind of let go of that initial quality of life or that vision. And I hope that gets across, not to mean that, don't save your money and money's not worth anything. That's not what I'm saying, but that I am saying that if you have a larger goal or quality of life target, that you will succeed better with your finances. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's exactly right. There's, it's family and people who really bring happiness and satisfaction, and you can't buy people. So you got to kind of separate those things a little bit and prioritize the people and the family. But obviously it's complicated, but yeah, I agree completely.
Cool. Just kind of gleaning insight from you based on the various different trades that you've looked around, you've been a part of. Obviously, you've been in, building houses with your dad and then flipping all those houses. I mean, tons of experience that you have in this field, and then the financial side, and then just growing up with your dad. It's huge, man. I mean, you've really been marinating in this stuff your whole life, right?
I know.
And,
yeah.
Yeah. Give us some different perspectives on other paths that have opened up for you because of your interest in the trades and because of being around the trades and so many different people you've talked to in your shows and in your business dealings. How has that informed you as far as like, wow, the construction industry has all these other places to go? What would you say about that?
Yeah. Okay. When I think of the trades, my brain instantly goes to the tradesman with the tools on, fixing the air conditioner or with the trowel setting mortar. And that certainly is like the guy in the spotlight that everybody is kind of, looking at, the homeowners and the customers and the materials manufacturers and the advertising. But yeah, to your point, it's really amazing, and I've been enjoying seeing the industry from my point of view now. How many, I'll say like satellite, but how many other people are orbiting that tradesman, doing the actual craft. It's unbelievable. And on our job right now, our spec house, we've got people coming and going all the time. There's the guy, we got painters there right now actually working, and the paint stores and all of the expertise that go in there. We've had calls with all the paint manufacturers and these scientists and chemists who are creating these products, and then the marketing folks at each of these people's businesses who are getting the information out there and designing. That's another aspect. We are working with M-Tech, who made the doorknobs and cabinet hardware that we're putting in our house. They donated it. Absolutely beautiful stuff. And these are coming from artistic designers, but guess what? Like it's this hybrid of the trades of building and construction. And so they're factoring in, how they're installed and how they look, and just this crossover there. There is sales and salesmanship and salesmen who I've spoken with who first spent, 15 years in the trade or more, hands on tools, who have leveraged and taken that experience and now are making real money selling products. We could say lumber, but it could be anything, because they can speak to the business owner and sell the product. So there's sales, and then there's probably a whole army of people just like us who are kind of talking about the trades and writing. There's journalists and blogs and vlogs and content creators, and it's just amazing how what the size of this industry is, and the fellows doing the actual work are really only one kind of small piece of it. Think about all the delivery equipment and the maintaining and organizing all of that equipment, and it's really unbelievable. We're speaking about markets, but this market of construction it's just amazing. There's we talked about accounting. There's probably 500,000 accountants who are deeply involved in the trades and know more about all of this stuff than I do, and they're doing the books for it. So it's amazing how having the trade knowledge and understanding, how these things go together and then are built. A lot of people like myself have that general understanding, and then, man, there's just a million places, things you can layer on top of that. I'm now layering video production and education on top of that. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, it's encouraging and exciting to think about the real scope of this industry. And even in terms of career, I think of myself as young in the career. I'm actually more like right smack dab in the middle. I'll turn 40 next year. I have no idea what the next 20 years of my career will look like. No idea. But I guarantee you it's going to be in this world. And who knows? I mean, the place where I end up may not even exist right now. Content creators as a job didn't exist 10 years ago. And now here I am doing this. So it's exciting, really. And I'm a huge fan. I just love everything about it. And there's pretty much everybody in it has it in common. They all started kind of digging and doing the ugly stuff, whether they're a kid or middle age. But most people who are in the trade, in the industry, have all kind of been there and understand that part of it. And then it's just kind of, where do you go after that?
The construction industry and the trades it just seems endless, the connectivity to other industries, and to our physical life every day. You were flipping houses for some time. It sounds like 4 or 5 years. Is that about right, or a little longer?
Yeah, a little longer, but right in there. Yeah. People think that flippers are, the worst possible, people. They're just like lipstick on a pig and get the house out the door. And there's a lot of that. That's true. But I think one of the reasons is the guys who are doing that, it's actually the house itself and the rehab, whether you rehab it this way or that way to maximize the sale is not really the important part. The thing I loved about real estate and rehabbing is looking for and buying good deals and learning how to recognize a good deal. And when you're looking at a house that has major issues, I bought this one house that had the slab on the floor on the inside was like heaved like 6 inches in parts. It was unreal. And it obviously terrified everybody who walked through it. And I came through it. I didn't know all that much about concrete, but I was calling my dad, nonstop, like, hey, what do you think? But anyways, learning how to get a good deal. And, that house I bought for just pennies, and then the remodel or fixing that problem didn't turn out to be that big of a deal when you find the right person who's an expert. It wasn't me, but you bring in the right expert on that. So buying and selling real estate to me, is like the perfect hybrid of the trades and small business and entrepreneurship and all of it. It's kind of like this perfect melding of all these like really fun things that come together in a way where you can make some money if you are smart.
Right. You know what I like about what you were just saying about putting lipstick on a pig or whatever. Funny expression, but it's like when you're just going to kind of tune something up real quick so you can sell it and make a profit. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that either, because someone who is going to purchase that place or live in it, you know, it may be their next step up, and you may look at it as putting lipstick on a pig, or someone may, but everyone's got to have a place to live, and
Right.
and very often you're providing another step up for someone else in their game, and I think that was that was well put. But you know, there's a certain amount of efficiency and economics that goes into all of that, and to be a good entrepreneur, to run a business, as you've stated before, there's a lot going on there. So you've got to find that you've got to watch your margins, right? And sometimes it's about making sure that you can get that job done, and while that artisan in you, or that builder in you says, well, we really need to take it that next level, there's a rational and very important practical individual that lives inside most of us that says, you know what, there's a limitation to how far we can take this particular job. And not to at all downplay what you were saying about it, because it's true. A lot of people have that idea about flippers, right? Like, oh, it's just a flipper or whatever. They're not a builder. But
Right.
you know, I think that's not fair in a lot of ways. I have done a ton of remodeling, and I was in the world of building custom homes as well. And so while I wasn't necessarily flipping as a remodeler, that's in a sense what I am doing. Now, very often I would remodel a house, and the people who are living there, they either just invested in that house, and you know, we would raise the value of that house and the livability, et cetera, et cetera. But in essence, I was flipping. I wasn't doing it with a short window of time and a crazy budget to work with. But that's really where that's really where you cut your teeth on learning how to run a business well. And hats off to flippers, because you guys know how to kind of get in where the market's right. There's a lot of economics and watching trends and stats, and then being able to target the right neighborhood, the right house. That's a lot of thinking going on there. And then you have to come in and go, okay, I've got to narrow down this skill set and these specific things that need to be done to this house so that I can make a certain profit. That's no joke. That's kind of like, you know, and you got to get in and get out quickly. And there's a lot to that.
A lot of times people think that the flipper is buying a house that they might have bought and then raising the price on it, you know, 80 grand and selling it back to them. But that's rarely the case. Most often a flipper is buying a house that never hit the market. You know, maybe it's been vacant for 8 years and the owner lives, you know, back east, and it's in a trust. They're doing the legwork of figuring out, like, okay, how do I contact the owner of this property and negotiate with the estate and get this thing back onto the market so somebody else can buy it. There are a lot of houses like that flippers, they bring them to the market that otherwise, I mean, they would have made it eventually. But we've all been in neighborhoods where there's a house just rotting, and it's like, what is going on? And there's always a story, and there's always an answer. And I bought a lot of houses from estates and from out-of-state owners, and from even people living in the house who had a situation that's complicated. You know, maybe I would have to like advance them, let's say $20,000 just so they can like get their stuff and move out, and then so that the house can't. So it's really like a complicated kind of problem solving, but very rarely are they just buying a house off the MLS, you know, repainting it, putting it back on the MLS. Maybe that happens, but most often they're bringing inventory to market that otherwise wouldn't be there if they weren't doing, you know, that leg work. So it's better for everybody. And for most people, if the prices are coming up, it's the flippers are helping alleviate supply. They're bringing more supply, which is going to help slow the prices down, hopefully. So they're very, it's an easy villain to, like, you know, go after. And in lots of cases it's warranted, but it's a very important part of the real estate market is people, just kind of bringing these properties back into circulation.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a huge favor to some of these neighborhoods too, where you're reviving some old decrepit corner of the
Mm-hmm.
the neighborhood that maybe became a safety hazard or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting too. Yeah, that's a good angle on that because you're right. A lot of people have this idea that you're just gonna, throw some paint on it and then sell it for more than what it's worth. And honestly, anybody who knows that neck of the woods knows that that's not usually even possible because you can't make that sort of profit, pulling stuff off of RMLS or whatever.
Yeah, these TV shows they've done a disservice to a lot of people who don't understand the trades because they think it's like, oh, I'm going to knock down this wall. And they just kind of like with a polo shirt, swing a hammer and poof. And it's just, and so there's a level of like, fantasy to some of those TV shows that I think to some extent has trickled down to the general public that like, oh, remodel, just going to pop out this wall right here. We're just going to pop out this here. Yes, no problem. We're just going to pop this over here. And guys like you are kind of like, oh, really? You're just going to pop that out just that easy, huh?
I've known a few flippers and man, guys are hustlers and businessmen. They know what they're doing. And the good ones have usually a pretty sweet team right next to them somewhere to go in there quick and get the stuff done.
It's a lot of competition too. Those guys are outbidding each other on properties, and it is, man, it's, I like I said, I kind of washed out after 5 years because there was just so much competition that I just was like, couldn't take the risk. That's the other thing that should be said. They're taking an enormous amount of risk, and any flipper worth his salt could tell you about a deal that went wrong. And it's one thing to like, do a big job and make like a tiny or less money than you thought. But it's another one when you do a deal and like take a bath and lose $25,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is. So there's a level of risk that goes along with it that sometimes if things go bad, you can really lose.
Yeah, of course. Maybe one of these days I can get you connected. It might be worth a good conversation between the two of you. A friend of mine and a very shrewd businessman I know, David Lipkin, who runs really clean construction businesses up here in the Portland area. He's done an amazing job in flipping and real estate, and I think you guys could really riff on really cool stuff. But have you done a podcast or anything that's dedicated to flipping houses?
I haven't actually, and it's funny that the parts of my, I'll say life, but the things that I feel like I'm like have the most expertise on, like maybe real estate or flipping, I haven't really touched on yet for whatever reason, but it's probably coming. My dad will have a lot to say about it. Also, he's done a lot of deals, and and I just love it. Yeah, we should probably scoot that up.
Yeah, I'll be waiting to see the textbook coming out.
Yeah. That's a good idea. It would even be fun just to get a bunch of, like you said, your friend, but man, you hear, there's some real stories out there of flippers and real estate investors who've done some deals that are just amazing and, inspiring and also terrifying. And there's a lot of cool stories in this world of people, doing a deal and it'd be fun to bring a little more attention to some of those.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more on that because I think, interesting volatile markets we're in right now, and really for people to sharpen their pencil and hone in on opportunity is getting pretty ripe right now in different little pockets around the country. I think it could be helpful. I'm wondering, as we kind of round things out, if you would have any parting words to the new tradesman, apprentice, the new contractor, someone serious about coming into the trades, what is some parting words of wisdom you could leave with with that person?
Man, I guess a couple things. First of all, keep expectations low. It's always like, it's never wrong to keep your expectations low. In other words, don't expect to get some awesome job and have everybody just like, give you the, the keys to the company truck and all their songs. Like, you might start out even after your, schooling or training and just be grubbing out a ditch or unloading the lumber off the truck. And when that moment happens, don't be disappointed, because that keep your expectations low. That being said, like we've mentioned, that's normal. People have to, they kind of start here and move up the chain. Here's my real tip. And this is like this amazing shortcut and hack that I really think, even young and new tradesmen can do. And it's really social media. And this is the other thing I feel like I've learned a lot about recently. But even if you're working for a company and doing some, just let's say more like the labor side, and you're just, you're working underneath somebody, you can start collecting. And I'm not saying build a whole social media account, but start thinking about it, because it's amazing the shortcut that having even a small little audience of people watching your work and building a little audience on Instagram or TikTok can give you a real leg up and almost shortcut careers. I've talked to guys who have done that after only a year or two in their business. Let's maybe speak to contractors instead of guys coming into the trades working. But if you're a contractor and you're new and you start putting work up, it's just amazing how much credibility that can give you. 10 years ago, it was a website. That was what a lot of people would be looking for. Like, well, where's your website? How do I before that, it was a business card and people cared about that. Nobody cares about that. And nobody really cares about your website anymore. Maybe a little bit, but take the effort and put the pictures of your work and projects you've been involved in. And even if it's not your work, there's times when you might be in like downtown Portland, there's some like neat brickwork or whatever it is. Let's say you're like looking at something, and take a moment and on your Instagram and just say, hey, see this neat feature right here that somebody built in 1984? That's pretty neat. And the reason that's neat, and if you're going to do that today, it would come out exactly like that. The reason, you know what I mean? You can find opportunities to make content about these things that don't involve you doing the work. And the point is, if you do that, then when your clients kind of come to your thing, you're going to have this real head start, this amount of credibility, and people will kind of know you. Matt Reisinger talked about this on my podcast, and
yeah, I watched that.
Yeah, it really, he had really like good experiences with this. And also Brad Levitt at AFT Construction, he's the one who mentioned that even, and he builds high-end homes, so he's no slouch. He's the real deal. But he said when he started his business, he started putting his social media accounts together. He would have like architects and designers working with him, and answering his phone call, who never would have otherwise. These guys are, real kind of high-end architects. They'd be like, oh yeah, I want to work with Brad. Why? Because he's got this social media account that he's built up. So the point is, it's worth the effort. And if I was building a construction company or even getting involved in the trades, I would not discount how valuable that is. And it doesn't take much time. You can just get her done. And I think it pays off. It has for us.
Yeah, clearly. You guys have put in a ton of work and dedication as well too, though. So there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
That's all great information. And what I'm hearing, what I got off of that just now was not just work smarter, not harder, but how about work harder and smarter?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
that's what it seems like it comes down to. Great stuff, man. It was a pleasure to have you, and thanks for taking the time. I look forward to seeing the rest of the house get put together on Essential Craftsman, as well as looking forward to more interviews on the podcast, and looking forward to hearing more about your deep knowledge about flipping houses in the real estate market. So I'm going to stay tuned for that one.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'll try to do that. And I'll there's guys who've done a lot more deals than I have, and building a team, doing flips like a business is really, that kind of blows my mind. And to think about what that how that's done. So that's a really great idea to bring in and talk more about that. It's a huge part of the industry. You know, a lot of tradesmen, that's like the next step, you know, maybe before you start a business, that's one of the first side hustles that tradesmen can do, is flip a house, and they do it all the time, and it works great. And so that is, we should probably, you know, bring a little more daylight to that, at least. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having me. Keep up all your great work at the school there and teaching these, all these students. It's pretty neat to think about a classroom setting and what a head start must be for these kids to leave and adults, I know, in your program. But man, that is just really great stuff. So keep it up, and thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, we'll do it again. Okay.
Everybody, Nate Wadsworth with Essential Craftsmen and Essential Craftsmen 2. Signing off, huh? Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Zane. See you later.
Have a good one.
Thank you.